countries to empower, celebrate, and support women in business, most importantly to alleviate poverty. And then I'm a limited partner in 5 crypto funds, 2 ESG funds, and investing in 20 startups, all impactful in this world to make a better world. And I know Marianne, how long have we known each other?
Oh my goodness, almost over a decade now.
Woo! Yeah, it's so crazy. Anyway, so Marianne is such an exceptional, incredible person. I mean, really, she should really just stand up here and talk because she's so freaking amazing. But anyways, Marianne has one of the most incredible lives, and she's doing such impactful work that I was like, when Tania was like, oh, we're going to be in Dallas, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to get Marianne. So Marianne, first of all, I just want to say thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
And what I'd like to start off with is like you have an exceptional life. So we're going to go back to like, the beginning, right? But I want to bring like and let them hear what happened. So when you first, were aware of who you were and you were living in Dallas, right? You were living in Dallas, and your dad, who was the founder and president of 7-Eleven?
CEO of 7-Eleven. My grandfather founded the company. My dad took it international.
Okay, cool. Well, that's good enough. Right? And so literally, what was that like when you first learned, about your history?
Well, for me, and I'm actually glad you asked that because someone was just talking about adoption, and I was adopted. And as I was sharing with Denny the other day, I was adopted because I was born at 7:11 a.m. in 1977 on Mother's Day. And the priest who was handling our stuff had told my mom, well, I guess she's destined to be yours. So when you realize that all this privilege, all this education, all this opportunity from meeting the man that I'm married to everything else in my life came about because of nothing that you've earned. It makes you very, very aware. And that's something that I encourage everybody in this room to think about, because you may be born from a family of legacy, but the truth is that you didn't do anything for that. So what is your responsibility now that you have that? And for me, when I started learning about that, was because my father didn't hide poverty from me. So when I would go up to New York at the 21 Club, he would go in and say, okay, did you see those people out there? How many out there were begging for food? Okay, there's 6, well, I'm going to send you out 6 burgers. And he'd send me out to give them the burgers and say, look them in the eye, see another human being.
Wait, but I want to go back for a second. Let's go back to say, to talk about how great your father really was. How did he find you? Say that story.
Well, he found me because my family, this is going way back, during the polio pandemic, the Murchison family was helping my family escape it. And at the time, they were out in the country. Well, out in the country would be in the city today. So when polio finally got way out there, they said, well, why don't you come hang out at our place in Mexico City? My family went down there, and my family fell in love with the area, decided to build a house in the middle of nowhere. My grandmother kept saying, further out, further out. And my grandpa finally just stopped and said, okay, we're not going any further. You have to choose something, anywhere but that rock. So of course my grandma said, I want the rock. So that's where the house was built. And the only thing in that area was a monastery. And there was a man by the name of Father William Watson, and he had Our Little Children of Our Religious World. So that's what he had. And he and my grandfather got very close because he was passionate about how do you take for-profit modalities and enable him to do what he did. And my grandfather was passionate about how do you use a for-profit to make an impact. So they worked together, and that actually became, here in the United States, one of the forerunners of profit share. They were actually called socialists and communists for advocating for profit share. But in the process of the two men getting to know each other, a friendship formed. And so when my parents wanted to adopt children in 1976, they were this close to adopting a pair of African-American twins, and they were told, you're the wrong race. She had an MBA here from SMU. She had a nursing degree. My dad's CEO of 7-Eleven. They said, you're the wrong race. You can't have them. So they were heartbroken, and they called their friend who said, you can't have this, because I ended up bringing children in. They served 3 years to help the other children. If I let one get adopted, the rest will feel bad, so I'm not doing that. But when I was born at 7:11 a.m. on Mother's Day 1977, the priest said, God sent a sign, and I was the exception.
Wow, incredible. And so what age did he first tell you about this? And
I knew my whole life.
Really?
I mean, look at this melon now. I could tell I wasn't related. I'm not going to hide that.
I love it. Okay, so now, your whole life, you're now the founder of the Memnosyne, I can't even.
The Memnosyne Institute.
And what does Memnosyne mean?
It actually comes from Greek mythology. It was the mother of nine muses, the mother of knowledge. And the story in ancient Greek mythology was that there's a river, there's a leaf river of forgetfulness. If you drink from it, you forgot all your wisdoms when you died before you came back an idiot. If you drink from the Memnosyne river, where you get the word memory from, you end up benefiting from the accumulated wisdom of humanity. So now, what we do, and the reason why we felt that was such a perfect name for us, is that we focus on helping people around the world deal with the challenges of globalization, and that means sharing knowledge. And so that's led us to negotiate the first treaty in 300 years between Hopi and Navajo tribes. That's led us to do a lot of things that are historic.
So, one of the things that you're really passionate about is supporting indigenous tribes around the world, right?
Right, that's one of the main things. It's not the focus, but we realize quite often they're a demographic that's not invited to the table. So we're often, people come to us and say, hey, we got black, we got brown, we got Asian, we got this, and we're like, oh, but you're missing one. So I guess that gave me that reputation.
And so with your foundation, what is one of the most impactful projects that you've worked on?
Well, this past year, we actually bought just under about $400,000 worth of K95 masks to go out to Native American areas all over the United States as well as Latin America. So a lot of what we do is we focus on what's pragmatically needed. Here in the DFW area, we have the #1 initiative fighting food waste in the nation. We feed 5,000 families a week here in Dallas alone. We have actually, it's called DFW, FoodSourceDFW. We actually now served all over the United States, down to Haiti, everywhere.
And so was this something also like that your father said, when he passed away, here's what we want to do as a family, or how did this all come about?
He never begged me over the head with it. When I look back, there are little things he did. I don't know if any of you have ever read The Lorax, one of Dr. Seuss's books. I have a memory of being on the bed, and he would read that, and at the very end he would say, unless someone likes you, here's a whole awful lot, and nothing's going to get better if it's not. And he looked me straight in the eye and really made sure that I was the one hearing that. And then later, when I was a high schooler, I remember sitting on the bed, and he threw the Lexus and the olive tree on my bed, and he never did. He said, every one of you, and this, and I was in 1996, my high school, he said, every one of you in your age group and younger needs to read this book, because this is the world you're going to inherit. And I read it, and that's when I started realizing globalization is being talked about in economic terms, but people aren't talking about it. What does it mean sociologically? What does it mean environmentally? If we're not talking about this, then we're not taking the full responsibility of what it means to become more interconnected, interdependent.
And so, so all of a sudden now you're like, okay, I'm gonna launch this foundation, right? And now I just realized, it's been a couple of years, or each other. But you're now investing in a similar...
Oh yeah. Well, one of the earliest programs we had here in Dallas, it was an interfaith program, and you can't make these stories up. It's just, I call it a God moment. But I was literally, my husband, Joshua, was doing a documentary, and it's not unusual for us. We keep real crazy hours, especially when you're doing a documentary.
I get emails from her at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, you do.
And I actually wake up at 6. I'm like, hey, now you're ready.
But about 3 a.m., my producer, Tania Arrayales, is walking to my house, and I'm opening the door, and we both get a phone call. And he got it from the chief of the Navajo Nation, I got it from the chief of the Hopi Nation. And they both said, this woman and these three men came by here today, and they said they want to slurry the coal in a way that's going to have to pollute one of the tribes. But they like us better. So they said, if we sign the dotted line, it'll just pollute other tribes, it'll protect us. And of course, we both heard this. We're like, don't sign anything. Well, I don't know how many people here have read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, but I encourage you to read it. John Perkins wrote it. I got this book, and I sent it to all the leadership of both tribes. I said, if you read this and you decide you don't want to meet, I will never bite you. If you read it and you agree to meet, we'll make it happen. We were told that 300 years animosity, it would never happen. We were told people have tried to get these tribes together. 3 people have literally been run off the road and killed in the process. Someone did not want that to happen. Long story short, they called us back, said, we'll meet. We negotiated the first treaty in 300 years between those tribes. I felt so proud. I came home, I finished my business degree. For the first time, I was capable to really read my trust documents. And I realized, oh my God, I was invested in Blackstone, Sip, and Peabody, the very people that are poisoning the water trying to do this. And that was a big wake-up call for me, because it's not just about what you do with your money, it's what are you making with your money. You cannot wash the blood off your hands by doing the wrong thing, by doing the right thing after you've made it by doing the wrong thing. And I went in, I got my entire family, the whole Thompson family, to do shareholder activism. We tried to fight it. Unfortunately, they were very smart and had made it so only a small group of people could vote on that. So I sold all my shares, used that money, and began social responsible investing. And now, in my 40s, I started seeing how it took so long to get here. So I realized I don't want to be sitting here in my 60s, waiting for stuff. And I realized that people, when they talk about social responsible investing, they're always talking about startups. But it's not fair for those of us, who want to do right and not lose our shirts in the process to say we have to wait 20 years. So I realized there are a lot of companies that have done the right thing by virtue of the founders having had a conscience. Some of them had a conscience. They fought for shareholder activism. They fought for integration. We can do things by looking at companies that have been around 60 years, older even, where the founders had ethics, not Victor LeBeau ethics, but real morality. And we can say, how can we work with that? And if we use that as the core, then we can trust that we're not going to be risking everything by doing social responsible investing, and then that allows us on the outside of that to be more creative. You can focus on LGBT, on activism, on a particular demographic, whatever you want. But that gives us a lot of hope. And right now I'm working with a friend of mine, Kalu, who helped create just under $1 billion fund to help people in Africa. And the two of us have launched UTF Holdings so that we can work on both sides. Because to me, the future of humanitarianism has to be for-profit as well as non-profit.
And what does UTF stand for?
His last name, Ngormo, and my last name, Thompson-Frenk.
And so in regards to the investments that you're working on, that you're investing in now, give us some examples of some of the stuff you've been in and the impact that it's having in this world.
Well, right now, some of the things that we're looking at is right now we already have, I've worked in things that were funds for women, I've worked in things for environment. Right now, we're also taking a look at doing development projects. We're starting something called ECO stands for ecological, environmental, ecological and economical. And we're doing things where we have high end that ends up being environmentally focused, but then that allows us to actually buy the different things like solar panels, stuff that are usually basically out of availability economically for lower income families. So if we can get this stuff on the high end, that allows us to negotiate with the companies to provide those items so we can build in lower income areas and provide those same things for people. So a lot of it is doing it with a conscience and with a strategy.
And so I know there's about, 6 different, okay, so can you give an example for each one?
Yeah, sure. I gave a slide. I guess it's not up there. But, oh, there you go. Maybe they can zoom in. But you can kind of see in the slide, I don't know if they can zoom in at all, but you can kind of see in the slide how on one side is nonprofit, on the other side is the for-profit. And what we realize is that so many different solutions need both. So, for example, one of the things that we began with in the Memnosyne Institute is the Vital Signs Monitor. It's working with AI, and it's actually being able to pull in and identify what are the things to get to sustainability development goals. Well, on one hand, it's wonderful applications for nonprofit needs. On the other hand, businesses and corporations need it. So the future is doing a lot of hybrid things between for-profit and nonprofit.
Okay, so do you have specific examples? Like, can we hear about them?
Right, the Vital Signs Monitor is just one that I talked about.
Right, but I'd love to know, like in the fund, like what are some of
that will be one of them.
That will be.
Because you have people that want to invest in that. We already have companies, we have the United Nations, we have groups that are coming in. On the board, we have Adolfo Audrey, he used to represent the country of Mexico when he went to the UN to analyze how do we get to sustainability development goals. And he called me up and he said, Marianne, people are throwing things as Jackson Pollock. Will this work? Will that work? Throw $1 million at the problem, throw $1 billion at the problem. And he said, this isn't how we're going to meet things in 2030. And this isn't political. If we want to have the quality of air, water, livelihood, these are things we have to meet just to keep what we have right now. So he said, we can't just keep throwing money at this. He said, we need a better way to do this. Well, the Vital Signs Monitor, which was based on the work of Don Edward Beck, who basically, he helped Nelson Mandela overthrow apartheid. His work is what Singapore and Egypt used to predict terrorism, bioterrorism. He said, humans are much more than just our worst aspects. We should be able to measure our impact environmentally and economically in positive ways as well. So Thomas Q. Johns has been working with an AI, and this began before the pandemic, and which we're taking that. When Ross Perot was alive, he actually worked with Don Beck, and they did what I would call a Polaroid snapshot. So it would be data from 1973, data from 1965, data from 1985. But you didn't have ongoing data like you do at the stock market on the environment, demographics, and other things. So now that we actually can do that, we're layering that data, and the AI is thinking 24/7, analyzing and measuring based on sustainability development goals. And now we can objectively, without politics, analyze what is causing an issue, what's going to happen. A lot of people don't realize that GDP began with the man that believed in measuring impact as well, and that was never implemented. So what Thomas has done, he's created what he calls the BAB, the big ass problem. So if you look objectively at the Gulf, it looks like it's very profitable to have an oil spill. But if you start measuring the impact on fish and all these other things, then it's not profitable. But we don't calculate that. So now we'll actually be able to calculate that. We'll actually be able to calculate impact of increasing kinds of industries, et cetera, et cetera. When you outsource, what does it mean for the local area when you're outsourcing something? We can look at that objectively. And what this will allow is whole communities, cities, corporations to be able to measure themselves against sustainability development goals. So we're not just throwing money at the UN. What this means is that we have countries, communities interested in it. Our goal is to have one for the world. It's going to be a hologram downtown. We have developer Mike Koch, who has donated land directly behind City Hall, will be putting in. It will be an actual hologram that's projected, so you can actually go in and implement your questions and be able to visually see yourself as a community. But we have people wanting to do this. Lori Anderson wants one for Israel, Palestine. We have people wanting to do this around the world. But you have for-profit application and non-profit application. So by doing it this way, this allows people to come in either direction. So that's one.
Woo! Oh, wow, okay. How much time, I don't even know, how much time do we have?
You have 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
3 minutes. Okay, so Marianne, is there anything like that you're doing that you want to do in the future, or is everything you're doing now? Like, what is the goal look like right now?
Well, I mean, right now I'm extremely excited because, things have changed, and because of the community that I'm talking to here, one thing that I will really encourage you all to do is, if you're with somebody that is not helping you in terms of your trust and your finances, go find someone. I went through something for 2 years. Now I'm very grateful. I'm working with Cadence Bank, Robertson Wealth, and now I go in there and they're like, you know what, you're not coming here and throwing a tantrum because you can't get a third Lamborghini. You're trying to help people. And so they're going to help you. And, that made a huge difference. And now I feel like I have a team behind me, and it's allowing us to go much faster. It's allowing me to use what I know and to identify what I don't know and get the right people behind it. One thing that I would say to anybody is looking to have impact is go ahead and get a business degree. It's all business at the end of the day, but also don't forget your humanitarian heart. Because when you have great ability, it comes with great responsibility. And everybody in this room has so much potential to make an impact in this world. So it's not that choice. It's whether you're going to take that responsibility or not.
Fantastic. Does anybody have any questions?
We have time for one.
One question?
Any questions?
Woo! I think you've let us all know exactly what you're doing. Thank you so much.